If you have been cheated on, how did you catch your significant other, and what was your reaction? Story 1. The story is remarkable in that it happened before the internet was widely available in the very early 90s when the world seemed much bigger. My fiancée Meg had one semester left of college that had to be taken as an internship abroad for her major. She chose to go to Belgium for this internship. I stayed back and the plan was that I would set up house, and when she returned that summer, she would move directly in and we would set a date for our wedding. So while Meg was off in Europe, calling every couple weeks to check in, the long distance was super expensive back then, sending me postcards and letters, I moved into a brownstone, bought furniture, etc. About 2 weeks before Meg was supposed to return, I stopped into a nearby coffee house that I had noticed down the block but had yet to visit. To my surprise, I found that my neighbor from growing up in a completely different city, Claire, was a waitress there. We hadn't seen each other since high school, so we made a plan to meet up after her shift for a cup of coffee to catch up. We met and Claire told me that she was engaged as well to a man, Ben, who was completing his course of study by working on an internship in, you guessed it, Belgium. I couldn't believe the coincidence and told her about my fiance and that they had to know each other. Crazy, right? A couple days later, I stopped in for a cup of coffee and Claire looked extremely upset. She asked if I had time to wait as she had a break coming up and that she needed to talk to me. We went outside and she told me that she had gotten a call from her Aunt Sue the day before. Aunt Sue had just returned from Czechoslovakia and that something very strange had happened. While they were touring Prague, Sue and her travel group had stayed in a local hotel, and the next morning she had run into Claire's fiancé, Ben, in the lobby, with a female companion by the name of Meg. She said that he introduced her as a student from America, that they worked together, but it was very awkward and they both looked scared, poopless. Claire said that she immediately called long distance to Belgium, and after several tries over the course of a day or so, got him on the phone. She asked him about the chance encounter and he said that he had been kind of expecting her call and ended up admitting that he had been seeing Meg pretty much the entire time they were in Europe, spending weekends and holidays traveling around with each other. I was floored, could not believe it. I went home and started trying to call Meg at her dorm in Belgium, finally getting through to her late into the night, early morning for her. I point blank asked her if she was dating Ben. I didn't even explain how I knew about it. She hemmed and hawed for a moment, kind of acting like I was crazy for saying something so nonsensical. But when I said that I knew Claire, she dropped the facade and admitted to all of it. So Ben and Meg had a very bittersweet homecoming. Meg got off much easier than Ben, as Claire had already left all of his belongings on the front lawn from the day she found out, which had been pretty picked over by the time he got back 2 weeks later. I did pick up Meg from the airport. I think at the time I really just wanted to see her face when I told her that all of our friends knew what a piece of she was and that I never wanted to see her again. To this day, I revel in how many utterly astounding factors of complete random coincidence went into Meg and Ben, who later married, then later divorced after he cheated on her, being caught. The universe works in incredible and mysterious ways. Story 2. Worst one I know of is an acquaintance of mine came home from work one day and found his missus making love with his dad. That blew up all over Facebook and became a local drama fest where people try to organize a shunning of the dad and missus. I remember it so well because, well, I know people cheat, but with your partner's father? Come on. Story 3. I was in the Navy and was out on deployment for 6 months after recently getting engaged. It's one of those stupid things that young military guys do. One day I get a letter from my fiance's best friend telling me that she caught my fiance and her best friend sleeping together. This was years before email and smartphones were common. We write back and forth several times and eventually it comes out how she caught them, how my fiance begged her not to tell me, and that the fiance didn't know that we were corresponding. I eventually get back to the States and plan to play it off as though I didn't know, but too many of my friends intercepted me with the news that it wasn't just the one guy, but several, and let me know that she knew that I knew. Eventually we met and the confrontation was minimal and tame. We broke off the engagement without a lot of drama. She kept the ring. The best friend and I ended up hooking up, at first as sort of a revenge hookup kind of thing, but turned serious. We celebrate our 32nd wedding anniversary this year. Story 4. Dated a girl for about 2 years. Like 18 months into the relationship, we're talking about moving in together. Then kind of out of nowhere, she starts becoming distant and irritable. We ended up breaking up. Fast forward 3 months after the breakup, I found that Facebook has a section where messages from non-friends are kept. Turns out my then girlfriend was banging her ex and the UPS driver that delivered to her store at the mall. She ended up getting with the UPS driver and his 3 kids. Last I checked, they're so miserable, and it brings me joy every time I think about it. Edit. In my messages was a note from the UPS driver's then wife. My ex not only cheated, but broke up a marriage. So the mailman memes aren't fiction after all. Most service guys have at least a story. I was in furniture delivery for years, and some women are way too forward. Story 5. We got married when I was 17 and he was 21. He was shipping off to sea, and I was escaping a bad home life. When he came back after his deployment, he was not the same person anymore. After about 6 months, he gained weight on purpose to fail his physicals so he'd get kicked out of the Navy. Fast forward a year, I'm working full time and he is sitting at home watching anime and drinking during the day and telling me that he was applying to jobs. I was applying to universities when my laptop died on me. I asked to use his to finish an app, and while doing so, a message popped up on his Facebook. A topless pic of his ex from her. I was shocked and opened it to find that they'd been dating for a long time. Started again while he was at sea in the Navy. He would talk to her and never to me, saying that he never got the time to email. She had sent him a pic because he had said how he missed having big knockers like hers to play with, and how mine were just too small, so he felt like he was with a boy or a child. I confronted him. He made a bunch of pitiful excuses. I had my friends come to the house that day and kick him out while I went to work. He then stalked me for the next few years and made posts on his Facebook about how I was a coward. He sent emails and called from blocked numbers to tell me that a restraining order is just a piece of paper, or that our vows before God made me his property and stuff like that. Then he bought a gun and started telling our friends that if you can't have me, no one can. I ended up talking to our friends and told everyone conflicting information about where I was going and moved states. I deleted all my personal social media accounts and lived in fear for years, watching him continually make memes about how he loved his wife and would do anything for her. It took 8 years for me to finally get the divorce from him. Jesus, I am so sorry you had to go through that. Story 6. This is almost word for word how the convo went. Me, you sleeping with so-and-so? Her, yeah. Me, want a divorce? Her, kinda. Me, okay, I'll file tomorrow. I like how simple that went. Sometimes it's just done, you know? But I'm curious, was it really as short as it sounds? Like neither of you made it worse? Oh yeah, it was a super civil conversation. We were just both at a point where we were just tired. Let's just rip the band-aid off and get it over with. Story 7. I didn't catch her. She told me and told me I wasn't a real man and that's why she did it. She just told me everything she hated about me, went on to why I'm worthless, pulled over, kicked me out of the car, and had to walk back to my place. As far as my reaction went, I went home, cried, went to bed, stayed in bed for a few days, thought I was a terrible person for a few weeks, cut my holiday leave short, and went back to work early to get my mind off of things. Edit. This was a while ago now, and I'm definitely in a much better place in my life. Story 8. I was at work and tried to call my boyfriend, but he wasn't answering, even after a few hours, and I just got a horrible feeling. It stressed me out so badly for some reason that I started to cry and my boss let me go home. The whole way home, I just kept feeling serious dread. Walked in the house and into my bedroom, and he was laying in bed, half clothed, with some naked chick. Obviously, a huge blow up went down, and after everything settled, this mother effer tried to tell me that he went to the movies alone and met her there, and she followed him home. Like, even if I believe that this person just followed you home and got naked, you let her do it. So what's the purpose of saying that to me? It was a crappy abusive relationship, and it didn't even end then. I eventually broke up with him, but not on the spot like I should have. If I could change anything about my life, it would be that I wish I broke up with the guy sooner. That was over 10 years ago though. Story 9. I found out that he had signed up for a bunch of apps, such as Ashley Madison, Tinder, and Bumble. He would message mutual acquaintances asking if they'd be up for massages, etc. I blamed myself for years that he wasn't interested in sex with me because I'd had a baby and gained a little weight. Nope, he just enjoyed contacting other women for sex more. We're in the middle of our divorce now. He doesn't understand why I'm wrecking our marriage because of a few indiscretions. Edit. never, 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 never say you're single on Reddit because of the possible direct messages. Story 10. This first started back in December, right before we went on a holiday trip to see my family. She started acting somewhat off, kind of distant, and easily aggravated. I had a suspicion that something was going on, and I'm embarrassed to admit that I snooped on her iWatch. Found some incriminating texts she had with a friend, so I confronted her in January. She tells me that she kissed the guy that she works with, and that was it. We were having some issues in our relationship, and I chose to forgive her, and we decided to try working on some of the issues we were having. Well, fast forward to this past May, she breaks down that she wasn't honest with me, and that she had actually made love with this other dude. We split after the news. We had been together for 8 years and had been engaged for almost 2 years. Our wedding date was supposed to be freaking yesterday. It's still effing killing me. I don't even know where to go from here. Story 11. I had my suspicions, but it was her who ended up telling me. I went into the relationship thinking, wow, I don't deserve this girl. Way out of my league. She couldn't help but remind me how much better he was several times and made sure to rub it in my face. My reaction was a spiral into deep depression. For someone that has very low self-esteem, being cheated on is one of the worst feelings. It feels like it confirms all your worst thoughts about yourself. I felt the same way out of my league about my ex, but believe me, dude, F that. There's nothing as way out of your league. I stopped thinking I was lucky to date beautiful women and instead started thinking, getting a beautiful woman is not a big deal for me, and that changed a lot of things. And real life happened as I imagined. You act how you think, remember that. Story 12. In a relationship for 6 years. Broke up 1 month before our wedding because I found out my fiance had cheated on me. 2 years into my relationship with my then fiance, lots of suspicious little acts kept adding up. The biggest one being that I found some condoms were missing from my drawer. Confronted my fiance at the time, I was very sad, angry, confused. She denied any affair. 4 years went by, and about a month before our wedding, she broke down and confessed that she had indeed slept with her ex-boyfriend at the time because she was depressed and was simply seeking any sort of way to feel something else. That broke my heart. I was also in the middle of an insane workday from home and had to power through the rest of the job with that on my mind. Not fun. Anyways, I had always had a bad feeling that she had been lying to me over the years, and she had an undying jealousy towards all of my friends who are women. She was clearly projecting. It hurt bad that she had cheated on me, but hurt way worse that she had lied to me for 4 years and went along with planning the wedding. I am grateful that she told me before the wedding, since we called it off due to the mistrust, amongst many other things that weren't going well in our relationship. We met at a young age, so no big surprise. I genuinely believe that she was going through some really heavy emotional turmoil from her past, so I don't take it so personally. I wish her well. With that said, I've cut off all communication to her because I simply could not trust her after that. All's well that ends well, and I've met the love of my life, and we plan to get married soon. Story 13. I caught my wife after she passed away from cancer. Worst feeling ever. Caught between unending love, mourning, and absolute anger. How did you find out? Her phone that she was overly protective of is how I found out. A week before she passed, her and I took the passwords off her phone so I could respond to her texts and take care of her business. After she passed, maybe a week or two after, I explored her phone and found numerous texts, emails, and sexting. How the hell did she find the time and energy while dying from cancer? I'm so sorry, but I did read your other comments and I'm glad you're doing better these days. I'm just like, but how? She didn't know she had cancer. From day of diagnosis, it took 2 months for the cancer to take her. Wow, man, that is so tragic. Please tell me you're seeking help with working through that ocean of emotions. Story 14. All these answers are about people who caught their spouses cheating. However, I briefly became the other woman, unbeknownst to me, and it's never sat right with me. I was young, single, and going through a family crisis, sibling unexpectedly passing. I met a guy who was fun and great, and very busy, which was exactly what I was looking for as I was grieving, and didn't want anything serious. 4 months of romance later, I found out he's actually married with small children. We were with his colleagues after work at a bar, and a coworker asked him where his wife was. I kept my cool, didn't make a scene, but once the drinks were over, I obviously brought it up and said how terrible that made me feel. I ended up just ghosting him after that. I wasn't in the mental state to deal with any of the fallout, so I just stopped replying to messages. I should have contacted the wife, but I didn't want to bother playing relationship police. At the time, I was under a lot of stress and grief and had my own problems and emotions to deal with. It's been 5 years and I always feel so terrible for the wife whenever I think about what happened. Sometimes I feel like contacting her and telling her what happened, but I don't know if it's the right move or even worth it. Story 15. My friend and his wife were in Rome a few years ago on vacation. She got a text while in the shower and he found out she was cheating. He grabbed his passport, phone and wallet, took a cab to the airport and flew home without leaving a message or saying a word to her. He went home, packed his bags, moved out and filed for divorce. He ghosted her the second he discovered it. The last conversation they ever had was her telling him she was going to take a shower. The sheer determination is what amazes me most. Story 16. I caught my ex-husband cheating as an accident. We had gone to work in the evening and I couldn't get into my office due to a building screw-up, so he let me in his so I could print something. He went for a walk to get his steps in. As I was on his computer, I realized it was logged into Facebook. I just had a feeling. I looked in the messages and he had been chatting with a woman he met in another country via our work. I copied all I could and confronted him when he returned, made him take me for a drink and told him there would be no reconciliation. He was shell-shocked and I told him to go home and pack a bag. That was 6 months ago and I'm really happy to have lost a dead weight. He was a difficult man, emotionally abusive, but I lived my vows and tried to help him as much as I could and reorganize my life around him. Edit due to questions. Yes, he had some odd behaviors leading up to this, including a work call from a woman on her family vacation. And in the text, he described wanting to have an affair with her, and they met periodically over 2 years, including one time he stayed with her for a month in her country. So yes, he cheated. Not just a flirtation, nor an emotional affair. Story 17. My ex was a big drinker and I wasn't. She would frequent this bar close to our place pretty often with friends. I rarely went because I just wasn't a fan of bars or her drinking friends. One night she went out with a couple that I didn't mind that much. I was bored at home, so I decided to head over for a little bit. As I walk in, I see my ex sitting at the bar with the couple. The bar was packed and as soon as I made eye contact with my ex, she had this strange look on her face. She turns to this guy sitting next to her and he immediately gets up and leaves. I felt something strange right away, but I brushed it off as me being irrational. I stayed for like an hour and headed home. I couldn't shake the feeling I had though, so I checked one of her friends' Facebook page to see if there was any connection that existed between my ex and this random dude. Sure enough, he was friends with one of my ex's friends. I knew his name now and that I wasn't as crazy as I thought. I sat on the information though. The next weekend, she goes out drinking again and still had not returned home at 4 a.m. I tried contacting her multiple times and I got no response. I woke up to her coming home at 7 a.m. and jumping in the shower immediately. I decided to check her phone while she was in the shower and she kept all of the messages with the same guy. Some pretty telling information in the text thread. While she was still showering, I grabbed a fresh pair of clothes and headed to my best friend's house. 20 minutes later, I get a phone call with her going apish about me leaving and not saying anything. I laughed at the projection, told her that if she wasn't moved out by Monday, the police would be there to force her out. She wasn't on the lease and her parents lived 10 minutes away from me. That was that. For the rest of you guys, leaving your ex alone in your home while she packs is a great way to have your stuff stolen or trashed. Story 18. Went for my yearly checkup and tested positive for chlamydia. Turns out my ex was sleeping around. Edit. Apparently false positives are common with these types of tests, so have your significant other tested as well. I hope you're in a relationship where you can openly talk about such things. This happened to me too. Then my ex faked a doctor's note with the words negative, yet he was still prescribed antibiotics, just in case. Little did I know that everyone and their mom advises to never take antibiotics unless you really need them. Also, the condom in his wallet was missing, but he insisted he used it with me. I was on the pill. Story 19. I owned a house with my fiance. I woke up in the middle of the night and he wasn't in bed. I went searching. His truck and another vehicle were in the driveway. Then I went upstairs and found the guest bedroom was locked. After barging my way in, I found him with another woman in bed. That bed happened to be my childhood bed. He forced me out of the room, literally grabbed me by the neck and pushed me out and closed the door back. I knew I couldn't do anything at that point. so I called his parents who lived a few blocks away. His dad showed up and another fight broke out. I ended up leaving and staying at his parents until dawn. I moved out that weekend and let the house foreclose. 9 years later, it's finally off my credit report. I'm happily married to an amazing man and we own a beautiful home together. In the same house? Brazen doesn't even begin to describe it. Glad things worked out for you in the long run. Story 20. June 1st, 2018. Normal day. Friday. My husband had kissed me goodbye and gone to work. I was cleaning the house for company who was coming to stay the weekend. The doorbell rang. There was a man at my door who introduced himself as the husband of a woman who my husband worked with. He was there to tell me that my husband and his wife were having an affair. He had busted them about 6 months prior and had told his wife that she had to end the affair. He thinks that she did end it for about 3 months, but then they started up again. When he found out they were at it again, he called my husband because he knew if he confronted him in person, he'd been in a jail cell for what he'd have done. On the phone, he told my husband to leave his wife alone, or else he would come and tell me everything that was happening. Apparently, my husband thought that he was bluffing. So I was literally the last to know. My husband never came home again. He got an Airbnb and a lawyer. The divorce was December 21st, 2018. We had been together for 24 years. Still hurts. 24 years? Then to just throw it all away? This is the most heartbreaking one I read. I hope you're doing well and don't think about the scumbag too much. Story 21. I was 8 months pregnant with our second child at the time, and he wanted to go visit his brother for the weekend. I asked my doctor if it was safe for me to travel, and she said it would be fine. I told my husband I could go, but he said he was really hoping to just have some time with his brother. I understood because a new baby really makes it hard to spend quality time, but I asked if he could take our older son, 3 years old at the time, so he could see his grandma and cousins. He said they were planning on drinking and whatnot and wasn't sure it would be a good idea. They're country boys, so think shooting, drinking, and whatnot. I agreed and he left for the weekend. After he left, I get a call from his best friend telling me that he'll be in town for the weekend and he wanted to meet up. Not weird he called me because my husband was terrible at answering his phone. I told him, unfortunately, my husband was visiting back home. Bad timing. His best friend then said, okay, I'm going to call you back, and hung up very abruptly. Turns out my husband and his best friend's wife had been caught by him a few months previously, and he gave them a chance to make it right. I don't know why. He didn't tell me at first, but threatened to if they didn't stop. Well, they didn't stop, and he told me. I think the worst part was that my husband's family knew and never once thought to tell me. These people were my family for 5 years, and nothing. It's been almost 10 years now, and I'm so much happier, but it was definitely an eye-opening experience. His family knew and didn't tell you? Oh my god, that's awful.